Shalom. I just got off a 10-hour plus shift, long day, full nervous system, like full nervous system. And on the way home, I realized something deeper about discipline, consistency, and what actually tries to stop people from becoming who they're meant to be. Because tonight, I almost forced myself to create in a way that didn't match where I actually was. And that moment revealed something that most people don't talk about. Not just exhaustion, not just burnout, but resistance. There are unseen forces in this world that don't need to attack you directly. They slow you down by draining clarity. They distract you by fragmenting your focus. They weaken your momentum by keeping you out of alignment. And the closer you get to your highest version, the more subtle those forces become. Not loud opposition, quiet interference. We've been taught that discipline always looks aggressive, grinding, pushing, proving. But pressure without wisdom is how people get pulled off their path. Real discipline is awareness, and awareness is what keeps you sovereign. I talk a lot about emotions being energy in motion. That's not abstract, that's practical. Energy is always moving, and when you're not conscious, it moves you instead of the other way around. Tonight, my energy wasn't asking me to perform, it wasn't asking me to be loud, it wasn't asking me to impress anyone. It was asking me to stay clear, because clarity is dangerous. It asked me to stay clear, because clarity is dangerous to systems that rely on confusion. Presence is dangerous to forces that rely on distraction. Stillness is dangerous to anything that feeds on chaos. And this is where a lot of people slip. They feel tired and they assume they're weak. They feel resistance and assume they should force harder. But not all resistance is meant to be pushed through. Some resistance is a signal to refine your approach. Refine the approach, because unseen forces don't usually stop chosen people with obstacles. They stop them with impatience, with comparison, with guilt for resting, the belief that if you slow down, you're falling behind. That's the trap. Consistency doesn't mean doing the same thing every day, no matter the cost. That's how people burn out before they ever break through. Consistency means staying faithful to the mission while adapting to reality. Some days require intensity, other days require restraint. Both require discipline. The problem isn't rest, the problem is unconscious rest. Mindless scrolling, numbing noise, avoiding stillness. That's how momentum leaks out, without you noticing. Intentional rest is different. It restores perception, it sharpens intuition, it reconnects you to purpose. And that's why rest threatens unseen forces. Because when you rest with awareness, you don't disconnect, you realign. Tonight, I choose nourishment over noise, not just food, but stillness, presence, discernment. That choice matters more than people realize, because progress isn't built in the moments everyone sees, it's built in the quiet decision no one applauds. So when you choose alignment over appearance, truth over performance, integrity over ego, a lot of people don't fail because they lack discipline, they fail because they lose discernment. They don't know when to push and when to pause, so they treat every internal signal as something to overpower. That's how people abandon themselves chasing outcomes. They burn out. They go too hard due to a lack of guidance, thinking they know it all. True discipline includes the ability to stop without guilt, to slow down without shame, to rest without feeling like you're betraying the mission. Because when rest is intentional, it compounds just like effort does. Tomorrow, I'll show up clearer, sharper, more present. Not because I forced something tonight, but because I didn't let distraction, pressure, or unseen resistance pull me out of alignment. And that's the part nobody teaches. Success isn't built by heroic moments, it's built by honest ones. Moments where you stay awake to what's happening within you, moments where you choose sovereignty over speed. If you're watching this late at night, tired, questioning yourself, wondering if today counted, hear this clearly. It did. As long as you stayed aware, as long as you chose consciously, as long as you didn't abandon yourself trying to meet an external standard, rest doesn't erase discipline, it refines it. Stillness doesn't stop momentum, it protects it. Honor where you are tonight. Move with the energy instead of against it. And don't let unseen forces rush you out of alignment. A lot of people think unseen forces look like something external coming at them, but most of the time they show up as internal distortion. You usually don't lose motivation, your focus gets fragmented, your priorities get blurred, your standards slowly lower. Not enough to notice right away, just enough to delay momentum. That's how resistance works at higher levels. When you're asleep, force works. When you're awake, it has to get settled. That's why chosen people are targeted through distraction more than destruction, through urgency without direction, through pressure without purpose, through the feeling that you're always behind, even when you're making progress. And if you don't slow down long enough to observe that pattern, you start reacting instead of leading. That's when effort turns into friction. This is why discernment is more important than motivation. Motivation comes and goes. Discernment keeps you oriented. Discernment lets you reckon Discernment lets you recognize when slowing down is strategic, not spiritual laziness. Because there's a difference between stopping and being stopped. One is conscious, the other is manipulation. And if you ever felt like the closer you get to clarity, the louder internal noise becomes, that's not random. That's pressure trying to pull you back into autopilot. But stillness interrupts that loop. Stillness collapses false urgency. It exposes what actually matters. It reconnects you to intention. That's why silence feels uncomfortable at first, because it removes the fog that distraction depends on. And once you see clearly, you move differently. You stop chasing everything, you stop reacting to every signal, you become selective with your energy. That's what it really means to rise in vibration. Not floating away from reality, but becoming more precise within it, more intentional, more present, more sovereign. And sovereignty is what allows discipline to become sustainable instead of self destructive. Shalom. And if you know you weren't on them Epstein files, like it, comment, and subscribe. No, for real though. Like, if you don't, then and you just watch this, your ass was on them files, bro.